So welcome, everyone. We're continuing with our series called Count on the Buddha, where we're looking at suttas from the Anguttara Nikaya, the numbered sayings of the Buddha. Last week, I went over some suttas where the Buddha was giving us advice on how to be a wise person rather than an unwise person. And one of the ways we can be wise is to guard the senses. And I had given my explanation of that as I remember from teachings I've received. But then when I was preparing for this week, the very next sutta I read, the Buddha himself explains guarding the senses. So I thought I'd just do an addendum to last week and let you hear from the mouth of the Buddha what he means by guarding the senses. So this was found in the Book of Threes, Sutta number 16, called The Unmistaken. Meditators possessing three qualities. A meditator is practicing the unmistaken way and has laid the groundwork for the destruction of the taints. What three? Here, a meditator guards the doors of the sense faculties, observes moderation in eating, and is intent on wakefulness. And how, meditators, does a meditator guard the doors of the sense faculties? Here, having seen a form with the eye, a meditator does not grasp its marks and features. Since if they left the eye faculty unrestrained, bad, unwholesome states of longing and dejection might invade him. They practice restraint over it. They guard the eye faculty. They undertake the restraint of the eye faculty. And then the same with the other senses. Having heard a sound with the ear, having smelled an odor with the nose, having tasted a taste with the tongue, having felt a tactile object with the body, having cognized a mental phenomenon with the mind, a meditator does not grasp its marks and features. Since if they left the mind faculty unrestrained, bad, unwholesome states of longing and dejection might invade them. They practice restraint over it. They guard the mind faculty. They undertake the restraint of the mind faculty. It is in this way that a meditator guards the doors of the sense faculties. Okay, and if you do that, you're a wise person. Or one feature of being wise. Okay, tonight, I found a sutta, which is in the Book of Threes, number 20, and it's talking about the basic teaching of the Buddha, which is the Four Noble Truths. So the actual sutta is called The Shopkeeper. Meditators, possessing three factors, a shopkeeper soon attains vast and abundant wealth. What three? Here, a shopkeeper has keen eyes, is responsible, and has benefactors. And how, meditators, does a shopkeeper have keen eyes? Here, a shopkeeper knows of an item. If this item is bought at such a price and sold at such a price, it will require this much capital and bring this much profit. It is in this way that a shopkeeper has keen eyes. And how is a shopkeeper responsible? Here, a shopkeeper is skilled in buying and selling goods. It is in this way that a shopkeeper is responsible. And how does a shopkeeper have benefactors? Here, rich, wealthy, affluent householders and householders' sons know him thus. This good shopkeeper has good, keen eyes and is responsible. He is able to support his wife and children and pay us back from time to time. So they deposit wealth with him, saying, having earned wealth with this friend shopkeeper, support your wife and children and pay us back from time to time. It is in this way that a shopkeeper has benefactors. Possessing these three factors, a shopkeeper soon attains vast and abundant wealth. So too meditators, possessing three qualities, a meditator soon attains vast and abundant wholesome qualities. What three? Here a meditator has keen eyes, is responsible, and has benefactors. And how, meditators, does a meditator have keen eyes? Here a meditator understands as it really is. And now he's giving the Four Noble Truths. This is suffering. This is the cause of suffering. This is the way leading to the cessation of suffering. And he doesn't, for some reason, doesn't include here the fourth truth, which is this is the path leading to the end of suffering. It is in this way that a meditator has keen eyes. And how is a meditator responsible? Here, a meditator has aroused energy for abandoning unwholesome qualities and acquiring wholesome qualities. They are strong, firm in exertion, not casting off the duty of cultivating wholesome qualities. It is in this way that a meditator is responsible. And how does a meditator have benefactors? Here, from time to time, a meditator approaches those monastics who are learned, heirs to the heritage, experts on the Dhamma, experts on the discipline, experts on the outlines, and inquires, how is this, Bhante? What is the meaning of this? Those venerable ones then disclose to the meditator what has not been disclosed, clear up what is obscure, and dispel their perplexity about numerous perplexing points. It is in this way that a meditator has benefactors. Possessing these three qualities, a meditator soon attains vast and abundant wholesome qualities. Okay, so those Four Noble Truths are the basic teaching of the Buddha. And the Buddha sort of compared these Four Noble Truths to an elephant's footprint. Like an elephant's footprint is so large that any other animal's footprints will fit inside of it. So he's saying just like the Four Noble Truths are like the elephant's footprint, because all the other teachings that the Buddha gave can fit inside of these Four Noble Truths. So they're the real basics. And when one has full realization or penetration, not just on an intellectual level, but sort of on a full body gut level, then that constitutes awakening or enlightenment. Now, Four Noble Truths. So the word truth, that's a translation from the Pali word satya. So it's not the same as what we think of as truth, like you're telling the truth, you're not telling a lie. What satya means is that which is. So it's talking about what's reality. And the Four Noble Truths are states of reality that were discovered by the Buddha. He didn't make them up or whatever. They were there. They're just aspects of reality that he came to realize. And he gives an analogy for this. He said, once there was an ancient city, and then it got abandoned or something. And then the jungle grew up around it, so it was hidden. But the Buddhists came across it and discovered it. So that's what he's saying. That's the same sort of an analogy for how he discovered the Four Noble Truths. That's like that ancient city was there, just nobody knew about it. So these truths of reality were there, but nobody had sort of figured them out or realized them or understood them, but the Buddha figured it out. Now, these Four Noble Truths are set up in the way that a doctor sort of analyzes a patient who comes in. So first, a patient comes to a doctor and the doctor makes a diagnosis. So that's like the first noble truth. And then secondly, the doctor's going to try and figure out what's the cause for this illness or problem that the patients come with. And then third, the doctor's going to give a prognosis. And then finally, it's going to assign a treatment. So if we look at the Four Noble Truths, the first, the diagnosis of the problem is suffering. And the Pali word for that is dukkha. And suffering is just sort of one of the translations for the word dukkha. Then second is the cause, which is craving. Now there are other factors that are the cause, but craving is the main one. And then craving's conditioned by ignorance, which is basically not knowing that there's an alternative to the unsatisfactory pleasures that we get from sense pleasures. And that's the stable pleasure of nibbana, awakening, enlightenment. Then third, the prognosis, it's good. We can realize this nibbana, this awakening, which is the end of suffering. And fourth, the treatment is following the Noble Eightfold Path. So going back to the word dukkha that often gets translated as suffering, there's no single English word that can really encapsulate the fullness of the meaning of dukkha. So words that can be used to sort of get at it is suffering, pain, misery, a basic unsatisfactoriness pervading all existence, which is due to the fact that all forms of life are changing, impermanent, unstable, and without an inner core. So dukkha is indicating a lack of perfection in our experiences. So it's a gap between an ideal state that we hope for and then what's actually reality. So dukkha comes in various forms. And so this is a list from the Buddha. So one of the forms is birth, old age, sickness, and death. Yeah, when I was working, I had several patients who really had a lot of suffering from aging, and these were athletes, like extreme athletes here in the valley, amazing mountain climbers and extreme skiers. And that was sort of their identity, and that was how they got their pleasure in life. And then as their bodies started to age and they weren't capable of doing this anymore, then they ended up in my office with terrible depressions. Not having an alternative to what was their identity and what was giving them pleasure. So that's one form of dukkha. Another is being separated from what is pleasant or being united with what is unpleasant. Having unpleasant things impinging on our senses. Another is not getting what one wants. And then the last sort of category is a little bit harder to understand. It's the 5 aggregates of clinging. So the five aggregates are basically what makes up our experience of life. It's what we think of as ourselves. And so we're experiencing life through our physical body. It's one aggregate. And then we experience a feeling tone with every sensory experience. It's either everything we experience is either experienced as pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. So that's Vedana, a feeling tone. And then we experience life through our perceptions. So perceptions are taking note of the property of an item. So if you hear a sound, perception sort of takes note of the details of that sound and can say, oh, that's a dog barking. So it's more than just a sound. You know exactly what kind of sound it is because you've taken note of the properties of it. The next aggregate is our mental activities, our desires, our emotional states, our habitual tendencies of the mind. And finally, consciousness. So we have the six consciousnesses: seeing, hearing, tasting, touching, smelling, and thinking. And this is more basic than perception. It's like for the seeing, there's just color and shape. And then it's the job of perception to figure out, oh, that's a car I'm looking at, or whatever. So these five aggregates that we cling to, they're considered dukkha, suffering, because they're impermanent, unstable, changing from moment to moment. So there's no basis in them for lasting happiness. Temporary happiness, yes, but not for lasting happiness. So most of us are seeking security in these five aggregates, but it can't deliver that security. We absolutely don't have control, full control. Maybe we can affect some things like eat a healthy diet and exercise to try and keep our bodies going for a little bit longer, but we absolutely don't have control, full control. Now there are three levels of dukkha. The first is regular suffering or ordinary suffering. So that's like just all the bad thing, all the sad things, bad things that happen to us: losing your job, losing a loved one, having it rain on your picnic, screechy sounds. Okay, so this is dukkha. The second kind of level is the suffering or dukkha that happens because of change. So this is all the beautiful things in life. Beautiful musical concert, beautiful relationship, a beautiful sunset. And they are suffering because they end. They're wonderful, but then everything comes to an end, or it changes, or it doesn't quite deliver what you'd hoped it would deliver. So that's the pleasant things becoming suffering. And then the third level is the suffering due to conditioned things. And everything we experience in the world is conditioned, it's due to causes and conditions, which of course are changing. So this basically refers to the five aggregates of clinging. The stock formula in the suttas for talking about how we experience dukkha is sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair. You'll hear that phrase a lot if you read the suttas. Now, the main goal of the Buddha is to teach us a stable happiness. Like our whole practice here is supposed to be about happiness. But he's telling us, he's teaching us about this first noble truth to try and help raise our consciousness or wake us up about the non-lasting happiness that we can experience in life, from just sensory pleasures. So he's helping us to see reality. And the Buddha encourages to look at three aspects of reality. The first is with pleasurable experiences, to be aware of the pleasure. There is pleasure. There are pleasurable experiences, nothing wrong with that. But then he also encourages to look at the danger, which is their impermanence, their changeability, their inadequacy, their unsatisfactoriness. And then the third way to look at reality is the release from this suffering, which is letting go of clinging to the worldly pleasures. Now, this may or may not be everyone here's goal. I think the majority of people will come to the teachings of the Buddha not with the idea of the final goal that the Buddha talks about, which is Nibbana, full awakening, and the end of mental and emotional suffering. But I think most people come to the teachings of the Buddha wanting to continue to enjoy the pleasures of the senses, beautiful sounds, lovely touches, beautiful sights, tastes, music, food, all of those things. And nothing, no problem with that. And so at that level, when you're at that level of using the teachings, the main thing you're going to want to focus on is to do your best not to cling to these things, to at least understand that they're impermanent, or they're going to change, or they may not, may not deliver exactly what you were hoping for. So if you can be aware of that and not do that kind of clinging, then that's going to help at least decrease suffering to some extent. Okay, so that's the first noble truth, suffering. The second noble truth is what is the cause, which is craving. And this comes from the Pali word tanha. And it's this craving that takes us from lifetime to lifetime. So that when you die, your experience is not over. You're going to be reborn somewhere again and again and again and again. So the Buddha said if we had the psychic power of being able to sort of see all our millions of rebirths and all the suffering that has happened in our previous lives, that we might have that feeling of been there, done that, and not be so anxious to be reborn. So I haven't had that experience yet, but I had a couple of experiences in life that sort of helped me understand what this could be about, what this could be like. And I think I've shared this story before. It was my experience with snorkeling. So on my very first beach holiday that I'd gone to, we went snorkeling for the first time, and it was like a real wow experience. All those beautiful fish and coral reefs and all the vegetation. It was a whole new world, and it was just so amazing. And I think I got to go on about 4 of these beach holidays, and I remember that on the fourth one, I was anxious to get in the water and, see all these sights again. And I was quite surprised. I got in the water and there were the beautiful, colorful fish and the coral reef and everything. And it was this real sort of ho hum, like it had lost its enticement. So I figure that's a little bit like that. Another example is Scott's here tonight, and when Scott first came to the meditation group, which was probably about 30 years ago, um, like I found out he was a backcountry warden and had been on horses a lot, and I thought, oh wow, wouldn't this be exciting? Why don't we get a group of meditators and we'll go out on horseback and meditate out in the backcountry? And Scott's answer was, been there, done that. Anyway, so experiences like that can give us a little bit of an idea of what the Buddha might be talking about when we can see millions of past lives and what's happened in them. Um, so now I was listening to some talks by Bhikkhu Bodhi to prepare for this talk tonight. And he was talking about forms of psychological suffering from craving. So if we crave something, it means we're wanting something that we don't yet have. And so that can leave us with a feeling of lack because we're lacking that thing that we're craving. So that can be a form of suffering, just that. And then in order to get things that we crave, that takes effort, striving, and that can be some suffering. And an example from my own life is I did this wonderful 3-month rains retreat with Ajahn Brahm at Boniata Monastery in Australia. But oh my gosh, um, the coming back flight, I remember it was 52 or 53 hours from when I boarded the first plane and then got off the last one. And there was all these long hours of waiting, like several flights, long hours of waiting in airports. And even though I had some sleeping pills from my doctor, I slept 5 hours out of those 52 hours. So I was just a total wreck when I got back home. And I remember it took me 6 weeks, took my aging body 6 weeks to recover. So even though it was a beautiful experience, there was a lot of suffering in manifesting that experience of that 3-month reigns. Then another way, craving things can cause suffering is once we've obtained them, we might have a fear of the item being stolen or fear of it being, breaking down or all the effort to maintain, to maintain whatever it is. And then we can suffer when we have it because it doesn't give us as much satisfaction as we had anticipated, or it satisfies us, but just for a very short period of time. And then we're off to crave something else. So there are three sort of kinds of this tanha, this craving. So one is craving for the sensual pleasures, beautiful sight, sounds, touch, taste, smells, pleasurable ideas. The second is craving for existence. And then the third is craving for annihilation. So the most extreme for that is suicide. But it can just be going blotto with drugs or alcohol, or maybe just, with movies or scrolling on the internet or something, other ways to make yourself sort of blotto or annihilating yourself from experiencing life. So the word tanha that we're translating as craving, it actually means thirst. And Bhikkhu Bodhi said, this does not refer to all desires. So you can have good desires, like the desire to practice the Dhamma, the desire to be generous, the desire not to cause harm, desire to help others, etc. Then there's neutral desires, like to go for a walk, or to go to bed, to go to sleep, or to have a meal. And then he said there's unwholesome desires, and you may not agree with this. The first one he has is desire for pleasurable experiences. And I think he's put it in as unwholesome, not because it's like bad, morally bad, but just because it has this potential for suffering, as I've previously mentioned here. And then he has other unwholesome desires for power, status, personal gratification. Okay, so that's the second noble truth, craving. The third noble truth is the cessation of suffering. So this is the prognosis, the good news that there can be cessation. So this is all mental unhappiness coming to an end, leaving you with a feeling of great peace, always being content, serene, happy. Because you still have a physical body, you're going to feel physical pain, but this apparently does not disturb the mind. And then when one dies, there's no rebirth. There's no craving for existence to bring you into another life. And then the fourth noble truth, which I'll just just mention, is the solution, the treatment, which is the path to the end of suffering, the Noble Eightfold Path. And we've given many talks on this. So if you just go to our YouTube channel and do a playlist and look for the Noble Eightfold Path, you'll find lots of talks on that. Now, to finish off, I'll just mention that there's a task associated with each of the noble truths. So the first noble truth, the truth of suffering, is to be fully understood. That's our task, to understand it fully. The task for the second noble truth, the cause of suffering, which is craving, is to abandon it, to abandon the craving. The task for the third noble truth, that there's cessation, can be cessation, and it's to be realized. And the fourth noble truth, the way to the end of suffering, is to be developed, practiced, cultivated. So it actually goes, the first step is going to be following the fourth noble truth, which is the path. And then this will help us to fully understand the first truth. And then that will lead us to letting go of craving, the second truth. And then the final thing is to have full realization, awakening, experiencing Nibbana. Now, I had one other little thing I was going to read that just sort of fits in with this. So this is again from the Book of Threes. And it's Sutta number 39. And it's called Delicate. So this is the Buddha talking. Meditators, I was delicately nurtured. most delicately nurtured, extremely delicately nurtured. At my father's residence, lotus ponds were made just for my enjoyment. And one of them blue lotuses bloomed, and another red lotuses, and a third white lotuses. I used no sandalwood unless it came from Khasi, and my headdress, jacket, lower garment, and upper garment were made of cloth from Khasi. By day and by night, a white canopy was held over me so that no cold and heat, dust, grass, and dew would not settle on me. I had 3 mansions, one for the winter, one for the summer, and one for the rainy season. I spent the 4 months of the rains in the rainy season mansion, being entertained by musicians, none of whom were male, and I did not leave the mansion. While in other people's homes, slaves, workers, and servants are given broken rice together with sour gruel for their meals, in my father's residence, they were given choice hill rice, meat, and boiled rice. Amid such splendor and a delicate life, it occurred to me, an uninstructed worldling, though themselves subject to old age, not exempt from old age, feel repelled, humiliated, and disgusted when they see another who is old, overlooking their own situation. Now I too am subject to old age, and am not exempt from old age. Such being the case, if I were to feel repelled, humiliated, and disgusted when seeing another who is old, that would not be proper for me. When I reflected thus, my intoxication with youth was completely abandoned. Again, it occurred to me, an uninstructed worldling, though themselves subject to illness, not exempt from illness, feels repelled, humiliated, and disgusted when they see another who is ill, overlooking their own situation. Now I too am subject to illness, and am not exempt from illness. Such being the case, if I were to feel repelled, humiliated, and disgusted when seeing another who is ill, that would not be proper for me. When I reflected thus, my intoxication with health was completely abandoned. Again, it occurred to me, an uninstructed worldling, though themselves subject to death, not exempt from death, feels repelled, humiliated, and disgusted when they see another who has died, overlooking their own situation. Now I too am subject to death, and am not exempt from death. Such being the case, if I were to feel repelled, humiliated, and disgusted when seeing another who has died, that would not be proper for me. When I reflected thus, my intoxication with life was completely abandoned. There are, meditators, these 3 kinds of intoxication. What 3? Intoxication with youth, intoxication with health, and intoxication with life. So that's basically talking about clinging and then the sorrows that come to that. Okay, just give me a second here.